I'm Jenna Fromme. I graduated from Western in 2009. I've used my passion for teaching and working with kids to travel the world from Germany to Alaska in the past 5 years in Bozeman, Montana. I teach in a small town called Three Forks. For the past 3 years, I taught first grade, and then this last year I taught fifth. So my portfolio is a collection of my time spent in both first grade and fifth grade. So welcome, this is my portfolio homepage. And there's a quote here: if a child can't learn the way you teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. And I really think that technology allows us to do that. Kids having trouble reading, they can hear it. Having trouble writing, they can push the mic and they can read it in, and their work can come to life. The next tab is literature. These are 3 papers that I wrote on topics within educational technology. The first one hits home for me, and it's about the infrastructure and having a strong infrastructure before you expect teachers to integrate technology into their classrooms. The second paper is on how technology has changed writing and how that's affecting teachers and how they teach writing. And then the third paper is about educational tool technology and how it enhances and enriches the learning process. The standards can be reached from my standards homepage or the drop-down menu. Each page has the standard itself, along with artifacts and a brief description of the artifact, which standard it meets, and how it meets that standard. And I've collected about three or more artifacts per standard. Here's standard 2. All the fun stuff that I've done with my students. These are all things that I've used in my classroom with students. And then my best works. So the first artifact, and these can also be found within my standards, is Adobe Voice. And I use this, so I've used Adobe Voice with both my first graders and fifth graders, and I don't know, this worked.
The website part worked because it worked yesterday when I checked.
I might refresh it and see. With the first graders, if the video shows, we did a gingerbread man unit. So we read stories about the gingerbread man and discussed the different ways the story plot went, and then the students created their own stories, brainstormed, wrote, edited, and then typed, and then on their typed pages they illustrated, and using Adobe Voice we captured that illustration and then reading it, and it turned it into a video, which then of course we had to celebrate by making gingerbread men, decorating them, eating them, and watching the videos, because what first grader does not want to do that? And the fifth graders, so being in Montana, Yellowstone is 2 hours out our back door. So we take the fifth graders on an overnight field trip, yes, overnight fifth graders, to Yellowstone, but their ticket to go on this field trip is they have to do a report on an animal that we might see while we're there. So they've been doing this for a while, and they usually do a poster. And I came in fifth grade, I was like, let's use Adobe Voice and create these, make these pictures or these information come to life. Students were able to find pictures that related to the animal and what they were talking about, and they had something that they could take home and share with their parents. Both of these posted to the classroom website, so then students they could share this with family, maybe not just at home, but across the states or in other countries. The second thing I want to share is learning environments. There's so many online resources out there, and I'm not one to stand and lecture in front of my class for 45 minutes. I feel like my students get swept aside, and the ones that struggle. So we do a workshop, small groups. One group's working with me, another group might be working on homework or playing a math game. In this case, the first one I'm going to talk about is math game, or they might be doing math practice online. So these are a collection of math resources that we use on a regular basis. So extra math, not the kids' favorite because it's kind of a kill and drill. They have to know their facts and type it in before the teacher tells them the answer. But I can say that by doing this, they know their facts by the end of 5th grade. If you ask them a question, it's not counting, they have it there. The next one we use is Khan Academy, or as the boys in my class like to call it, Kanye West Academy. So this is really nice, and I wish that I could scroll down. I just took a screenshot, but there's probably a dozen different math topics that the students can choose from, and there's videos that go with it. So fractions is a huge one in 5th grade. So maybe they didn't quite get the lesson that I had taught them in our small groups. They can watch a video on multiplying fractions and do that practice. We talk as a group, like, you know what you're supposed to do, you know where you need to work, and maybe we'll have individual conferences about where students need to work, but they're responsible for finding stuff that they are struggling with and addressing that, because they're the ones that are going to help themselves through school. The next one, 10 marks, is probably the hardest one that we do. I can assign different assignments for them, and the wording is not quite what we use in class, so they're having to think differently about it. Once they get the concept, they're off and rocking. They like to rack up as many coins as they can, so they know the 10 market and play games. So that's usually the goal. They'll like race each other to see who can get the most points. And then IXL is another one where there's just different assignments that students can use practice their math skills in different areas. And last but not least, their favorite for math is Prodigy. If you were a 90s kid, this is kind of like Zelda. So they have a little guy that goes around and they have to battle other people. Well, they battle them by answering math equations. And if I were learning about decimals, I can put in decimals. So all of their battles focus on the math topic that we're working on in class. So I don't only use these online resources for math, but spelling, vocabulary, and reading. So vocabulary and spelling city. How many of you have had to write your spelling words 5 times each for practice? Well, this allows them to play games, working with their spelling words for the week, and it also uses the vocabulary words, so what the words mean. They're not just learning how to spell it, but they're learning what it means. And there's 2 dozen to 3 dozen different games that students can play, and they really enjoy doing this. Sometimes they'll work next to each other. My boys were really competitive, so they like to compete in 5th grade. For reading, our school's big on accelerated reader. So each student has their own account, they read a book, and they log in and put the book in, and it comes up with questions. So it really shows me if the student has read and understood the book, or maybe it was too hard, or they didn't do the assignment that they were supposed to. There's a big competition between classes for this program. And then I used RAS Kids a lot with my 1st graders. They would read and listen to the story and answer questions, and I can set it at their own level. So each student has their own account, and then it's set at their level. So if a student's struggling, then I can give them easier, or if they're more advanced, then they can have a harder reading books to read. And then making assessments fun. It's always fun to play games in the classroom, and it's even better when they're educational. So the first one is we use Jeopardy. This one was for the elements periodic table. So kids are in groups. They can pick the different categories and points. And you can actually see who's maybe understanding the material and who's not. And then their favorite is Kahoot. And this one was on conversions in math. And they usually make teams and they work together to try and solve whatever questions are being asked as fast as they can. And what's nice about Kahoot and Jeopardy, but you can use it for any subject, from spelling, reading, math, science, social studies. And then the last thing I would talk about is we do a thing called Google Fest, or it's kind of a new thing in Montana. I don't know about here, but teachers come in and they present things that they do in their classrooms with so I've been to two. There's one in Three Forks where I teach, and then one in Missoula. But I'm actually gonna teach at one this next week. Yep.
I'm trying reloading them. And
Sure.
see if it's on the
Yes,
website.
I
I don't know
would.
if it'll work, but they were really impressive.
So their little voices.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know,
So-
it's right, it was really on the video. All
Well,
right.
thank you.